You are surrounded by people. You have contacts in your phone, followers on social media, colleagues at work, family members you speak to regularly. And yet, there is a specific feeling you know intimately. A feeling that has nothing to do with whether other people are physically present in your life. A feeling that can appear in a crowded room, in a long-term relationship, in a family home full of people who love you. The feeling of being fundamentally, deeply, invisibly alone. Not lonely in the way children are lonely when their friends go home, but lonely in the way that makes you wonder whether anyone truly sees you, whether anyone truly knows you, whether the version of yourself you present to the world has any genuine connection to the person you actually are inside. This feeling has a name, and it is more dangerous than almost anything else you can experience. Today we're going to show you exactly what loneliness does to your brain and your body, why the science reveals it is as damaging to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, and what the psychology behind genuine human connection actually requires to heal it. Stay with us, because this may be the most personally important video we have made. The difference between solitude and loneliness. Before we go further, we need to establish something important that most conversations about loneliness get wrong. Loneliness is not the same as being alone. Solitude, chosen, comfortable time spent alone, is psychologically neutral or even beneficial for many people. Introverts in particular often find solitude genuinely restorative. Being physically alone does not produce loneliness. Loneliness is a subjective psychological experience. It is the painful perception of a gap between the social connection you have and the social connection you need. It is entirely possible to be physically surrounded by people and experience profound loneliness, and entirely possible to spend significant time alone without experiencing loneliness at all. This distinction matters enormously because it means loneliness cannot be solved by simply adding more people to your life. It requires something specific that mere social presence cannot provide. Genuine felt connection. The experience of being truly known, truly understood, and truly accepted by at least one other human being. And in the modern world, despite having more ways to communicate with more people than any generation in human history, this specific experience of genuine felt connection is becoming increasingly rare. What loneliness does to your brain. Neuroscientist John Cacioppo at the University of Chicago spent over 2 decades studying loneliness and its effects on the human brain and body. His findings were so alarming that he described loneliness as a public health crisis hiding in plain sight. Here is what chronic loneliness does to your brain. First, it activates your threat detection system continuously. Your brain evolved in a social species where being separated from your group was genuinely dangerous. Isolation meant vulnerability to predators, inability to find food, and exclusion from the protection of collective living. Loneliness, the perceived absence of protective social connection, triggers your brain's threat response in much the same way physical danger does. This means chronically lonely people are walking around with their amygdala, their threat detection center, in a state of continuous low-level activation. They perceive the world as more threatening. They interpret ambiguous social signals more negatively. They expect rejection more readily, and they become more socially withdrawn, which deepens their loneliness further in a devastating self-reinforcing cycle. Second, loneliness measurably alters gene expression. This finding shocked the scientific community when Cacioppo first published it. Chronic loneliness actually changes which genes in your immune cells are expressed. Specifically, upregulating genes involved in inflammation and downregulating genes involved in antiviral immune response. In practical terms, this means chronically lonely people have immune systems that are chronically inflamed and less effective at fighting viral infections. Their biology has shifted toward a threat response mode that prioritizes inflammation. useful for healing wounds from physical attacks, and away from antiviral defense, useful for fighting the infectious diseases that actually threaten modern humans. Third, loneliness accelerates cognitive decline. Multiple large-scale studies have found that chronically lonely older adults show significantly faster rates of cognitive decline and dramatically higher rates of dementia compared to socially connected people, even when controlling for physical health, depression, and other variables. The social engagement that genuine connection provides appears to be a critical form of cognitive stimulation that protects brain function over time. Its absence has consequences for brain health that accumulate silently over years and decades. The physical health consequences Cassioppo's research and the extensive body of work it inspired documented physical health consequences of chronic loneliness that are genuinely shocking in their severity. Lonely people show significantly elevated levels of cortisol, the stress hormone whose effects on the body we discussed in detail in an earlier video. This chronic cortisol elevation drives the same cascade of cardiovascular damage, immune suppression, and metabolic disruption we covered before, but driven entirely by the psychological experience of social disconnection rather than any external stressor. Research published in the journal Perspectives on Psychological Science, analyzing data from over 3 million people, found that social isolation increased the risk of early death by approximately 26. Loneliness specifically increased that risk by 29. Living alone increased it by 32. To put these numbers in context, these mortality risks are comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes per day and exceed the mortality risk associated with obesity. Your doctor measures your blood pressure, your cholesterol, your blood sugar. Almost no doctor asks how connected you feel to other human beings. Yet the research suggests that your answer to that question may be as predictive of your lifespan as any of those clinical measurements. Why modern life creates the perfect loneliness conditions here is the psychological and sociological reality that makes loneliness such a devastating modern epidemic. The conditions of modern life are almost perfectly designed to produce chronic loneliness, even in people who are objectively socially active. Geographic mobility has separated people from a multi-generational community structures that once provided automatic, deep social connection. The average American moves approximately 11 times in their lifetime, making it increasingly difficult to build the long-term relationships that provide the deepest felt sense of connection. The shift from community-oriented to individual-oriented living, single-person households, private transportation, home entertainment, has removed the casual, repeated social contact that once happened naturally, and that research shows is essential for building genuine connection over time. Digital communication has created the illusion of social connection while often failing to provide its neurological substance. Texting, social media, video calls, all provide information about other people without reliably producing the felt sense of genuine presence and mutual understanding that your brain requires to register a social connection as satisfying. Your brain evolved to read facial micro-expressions, to process vocal tone, to feel the physical proximity of another person's presence. These subtle but critical social signals are largely absent from digital communication. And without them, your brain does not fully register the interaction as the genuine connection it is seeking. This is why a person can spend hours communicating digitally and still feel profoundly lonely. The information was exchanged. The connection was not. The psychology of genuine connection. So what does genuine connection, the kind that actually satisfies your brain's social needs and protects your health, actually require? Researcher Brené Brown spent years studying human connection and vulnerability, and her findings point to something that most people find genuinely uncomfortable. Genuine connection requires genuine vulnerability. Not performing wellness, not curating your best self, not showing up as the version of yourself that you believe is most acceptable to others. The neurological experience of being truly known and truly accepted, the specific felt connection that protects against loneliness, only occurs when you allow another person to see something real about you. Something unpolished, something uncertain, something that you're not completely sure they will accept. This is why social media, which is fundamentally a platform for curating and performing your best self, cannot provide genuine connection regardless of how many interactions it generates. The performance prevents the vulnerability. And without vulnerability, there is no genuine felt connection. Brown's research shows that the people who experience the deepest sense of connection are not the people with the most social interactions. They are the people with the courage to be genuinely seen, to allow real relationships rather than managed ones. What the science recommends. Here is what research shows actually builds the genuine connection that heals loneliness. First, prioritize depth over breadth in your relationships. One relationship in which you feel genuinely known and accepted provides more protection against loneliness than dozens of relationships that remain at the surface level. Deliberately investing time and vulnerability in deepening one or two existing relationships produces more felt connection than expanding your social circle. Second, embrace repeated unplanned contact. Research by psychologist Jeffrey Hall shows that genuine friendship requires approximately 50 hours of shared time to develop from acquaintance to casual friend and around 200 hours to develop into genuine closeness. Most adult friendships never accumulate this time because modern life rarely creates the conditions for unplanned repeated contact that once happened naturally in communities. Deliberately creating regular shared time, a standing weekly commitment with someone you want to know more deeply, replicates the conditions under which genuine connection naturally develops. Third, practice vulnerability in small, deliberate doses. You do not need to immediately expose your deepest fears to every person in your life. Research on vulnerability and connection shows that small, genuine disclosures, sharing something real about how you actually feel rather than how you are performing to feel, build connection incrementally and safely. Each small act of genuine self-disclosure invites reciprocal disclosure from the other person and slowly builds the mutual knowledge and acceptance that genuine connection requires. Fourth, seek shared experience over shared information. Doing things together, even simple things, builds connection more effectively than talking about things. Shared physical experience, shared challenges, shared laughter produce neurochemical bonding responses that information exchange alone does not. The reason old friendships often feel instantly deep when reunited is partly the accumulated shared experience that created genuine neural bonding over time. Close, you were not designed to be alone. Not in the modern sense of physical isolation, but in the deeper sense of moving through your life without anyone who truly knows you. Your brain needs genuine connection the way your lungs need air. Not as a luxury, not as a social preference, as a biological necessity whose absence produces measurable damage to every system in your body. The epidemic of loneliness in the modern world is not happening because people stopped caring about each other. It is happening because the conditions of modern life have quietly dismantled the structures that once made genuine connection automatic and replaced them with digital simulations of connection that look right but feel empty. Now that you understand what genuine connection actually requires and what its absence actually costs, you have something most people navigating modern loneliness never have: a map. If this video touched something you have been feeling but never been able to name, share it with someone in your life, because the act of sharing it might be the small, vulnerable step that begins to build the connection you both need. Subscribe to Mind Body Truth for more videos that reveal the hidden psychology behind your health, your habits, and your mind, because you were never meant to figure this out alone.